The Bennett house gleamed that evening, polished mahogany, amber chandeliers, filled with the family gathered to toast, another feather in our cap. The new Bennett smokehouse on Bay Street had been a hit. Anita Bennett raised her glass to Marcus, the youngest son and CEO who turned the family recipe into a small empire. Patrick, relieved and proud, clinked glasses. Evan, Marcus's older half-brother and a lifelong artist, offered a polite toast and remained distant. Anita's praise of Marcus came with a sting for Evan. "It's nice to have a son who's practical," she said, and laughter circled the table. Evan, tight around his glass, excused himself to the garden. Marcus followed. Under Spanish moss, Marcus found Evan lit honestly in moonlight. Brothers, close enough once to borrow jackets and argue late into the night, their bond survived the family's comparisons. Evan squeezed Marcus's hand and said, quietly, "Go inside. There's someone I want you to meet." That someone was Jasmine Harrington, the Harrington's daughter, bright and warm, who had become Marcus's secret solace. She moved into rooms like light and laughed like a bell. Their stolen afternoons and quiet promises had made her the center of Marcus's life. The Harringtons and Bennetts struck a business deal, Bennett expansion into Harrington food halls. To seal it, the Harringtons proposed an alliance of names. Jasmine would marry Evan. A formality, Jasmine's father said, eyes on Patrick, an arrangement to secure trust and investors. Marcus laughed at first, thinking it a bad joke. But business deals don't always respect hearts. Jasmine had loved Marcus. She'd liked Evan in an easy, companionable way. For Marcus, the news was an anvil to the ribs. For Evan, it confirmed a role he'd accepted, the safe, expected son-in-law while paint and canvas waited. The wedding came within weeks. Jasmine in white looked like a lighthouse. Marcus watched from the shadows as she took Evan's hand. He retreated into work, letting the smokehouse occupy the space she'd left. Yet grief pulled him alone to the docks where they'd first kissed. One night, after testing a new smoke infusion alone in the office, Marcus was seized by sickness. In a bathroom under harsh light, he took a pregnancy test, positive. A child. Panic and love collided. Afraid of judgment and certain he couldn't protect the child amid family expectations, Marcus fled for Chicago. He left Landon, Langston, the name he chose, temporarily with Lily, a neighbor who helped. In Chicago's long winter nights, he learned the small hands of care. Lullabies hummed like recipes. Awkward tenderness taught him fatherhood. A year later, Marcus returned to Savannah with his son. The city smelled the same. At the market, he saw Jasmine and Evan together, laughing, peach-stained. And the old hunger rose. Fate, or irony, put them in the same car after the market. Evan invited Marcus to dinner. Jasmine squeezed Marcus's hand under the dim light and asked him to join. They ate sticky shrimp, hush puppies, and the past found cracks to seep through. Afterward, beneath a porch light, Marcus and Jasmine confessed what-ifs and regrets. Jasmine said she regretted hiding things. Marcus regretted leaving. They kissed, spoke of honesty and plans. The next morning, Jasmine arrived at Marcus's apartment with a small framed photo of a sleeping baby. Marcus froze. The photograph slipped between them like a stone in still water. "How could you?" she whispered, part accusation, part plea. The truth hit Jasmine hard. Evan discovered the same photograph days later in Marcus's flat. He felt betrayed not because Marcus had loved Jasmine, but because the arrangement he'd entered had always been a bargain he'd accepted without full knowledge. Love had not grounded his marriage. Weeks that followed felt like slow-motion cruelty, kitchen table quarrels, silences, and the family stage losing its script. Then Evan did the surprising thing. He filed for annulment. Not spiteful but honest, he could not build a life on lies. He returned to his studio, painted furious canvases, and handed Jasmine the papers, voice shaking but clear. "I married believing in a promise that would make the world easier. I cannot live on lies." Jasmine, grieving the child kept in the shadows, wanted to meet him. Marcus brought Landon to the house. Patrick and Anita stood in the doorway, surprise curdling into shame. Patrick's business-sharp eyes softened. "Marcus, why didn't you tell us?" he asked. "I was afraid," Marcus said. "I thought leaving would protect everyone. I wanted to build a life for him first." Anita, who had prized polish and measured success, covered her face with disappointed hands. "We failed you," she said, admitting that their comparisons and expectations had hurt both sons. In that small, bright room with an infant breathing quietly, the family recognized the humanity they'd missed. Months passed into a gentler rhythm. Evan painted again. His canvases found a small, receptive audience and a local gallery that surprised the family with its embrace. The Bennetts, chastened, funded Evan's show and a fledgling theater program he dreamed of leading. Anita, once dismissive, stood at an opening and watched people moved by art she had once mocked. Patrick apologized one evening in the mahogany parlor. He took Marcus's hand. "I'm sorry I valued one kind of success more than another," he said. "You both made me proud in ways I didn't have the language for." Jasmine and Marcus rebuilt carefully, honest visits, slow re-entry into family life. Jasmine became a steady presence for Landon. Uncertain at first, then certain, then radiant in the ordinary ways of shared breakfasts and sleepy Sundays. Evan could come for holidays. Sometimes he brought a small painting as a gift. On a late spring afternoon, Patrick and Anita watched Landon crawl across the living room, tiny fist outstretched toward a stuffed whale. They had never imagined this child in their family, but in his dark, curious eyes, so like Marcus's, something in them softened. The house, which had once prized polish above all, learned to hold mess and mercy in equal measure. The smokehouse continued to thrive, but in the Bennett home, the measure of success had quietly changed.